Hey, morning guys. Will, just time prepping. Hey, welcome to Story Time with Will. As you guys all know, we all left off at the end of chapter 4 last time, and trying to get up number 5 here as we speak. It's going to be called Marc and Dog. It takes place January 28th, and it takes place in West Virginia. So it starts out with hell. Marc knew it was a bad idea as soon as the front tires of his muddy SUV eased out onto the mostly clear suspension bridge. He could feel the way it vibrated in the heavy wind, but the waters had risen while he slept and left only this way out. The iron gates under the glazer groaned and their supports completely covered in slushy, menacing debris as he neared halfway. Then they gave. Crack! Tap! The solidness under the wheels tilted suddenly, and one of the two foundations slid enough to pull the bars out of the other bank, rocking the bridge like a child's racetrack. The blazer tilted violently, and the guarded rail began ripping away with horrible grinding noises, cables snapping like string. Marc hit the gas, aiming for the end of that was now dropping heavily toward the shallow side of the dammed-up Black River. Semper Fi! Dust and debris flying, the blazer leapt off the bridge and the lowered side and dropped into the front of the rushing water like a lead ball. It crushed the front bumper and tossed up a spray that drenched both driver and the vehicle. Pulled along with the swift current, Marc rolled the front windows down, surprised the engine hadn't stalled yet. Slinging his kit over one broad shoulder, the grunt ignored the water rushing inside and aimed for the steep bank he knew had no chance of climbing with his vehicle. Wincing at the cracking sounds of the bridge behind him, the furious yapping of the big animal in the passenger seat confirmed what he already knew. They were in trouble. Dog, out! Marc shoved his 6-foot, 225-pound frame through the window, and an instant after the wolf did, they jumped down into the icy water as the bridge finally collapsed, and the wall of the liquid death lunged forward. Marc scrambled up the slick, muddy bank, taking rope from his kit and working it into the lasso. He threw it into the surging water, hit the slowly moving blazer, and rolled it like a castle box in the wind. The thick rope sailed over a charred pole, and Marc hoped it was anchored deep enough into the ground as he quickly tied the rope around his waist. Then the water came thundering like an army and submerged him. Unable to breathe or to protect himself from the debris in the nasty liquid that slammed him into the mercilessly, Marc controlled the panic. The pole trembled under the pressure of the rushing Black River, wood vibrating against his hip, and he used it to shield himself from the bigger chunks, lungs hurting. Marc drew his knife, ready to cut free if the pole came out of the ground. The pole shifted suddenly and tilted, and then he could breathe again as the first tall wave rolled by. Coughing, spitting, and sliding into the gelatinous slop, Marc cut himself free and moved to safety as quickly as he could. Yet another lesson learned in the harsh new homeland. Bridges are not safe. Marc made it to the higher ground, shivering in the cold wind as the dog danced in the mud around his ankles, lungs aching. Marc stumbled away from the crumbling bank. Quickly jerking onto the long coat from his kit, he watched the fast-moving water with the barrier gone. It would now flow downstream and rise up to spill over the weakened banks before seeping into the next town, the way it had been in nearly every other place he'd come through. Nature was quickly reclaiming her property. Mark took a long glance around as he got his breath back, deciding where he would make camp and wait out the water. The Blue Ridge Mountains were east, rolling peaks of foggy blue under the white, purple, and yellow sunset that was marred by angry gray layers that never faded. South was dipping valleys, hills full of tobacco fields, and Virginia white pines. That was where he had come from, and those empty, snowbound towns had given him nothing to take hope from. West was another community whose name he couldn't recall, and the newly released water had already overwhelming it. He saw no one fleeing the filling houses and businesses through it though, and grunted unhappily. The setrep was bleak. A situation report from the north done. Maybe a full click above him, a small white building with a large silver cross beckoned in the dim distance, pristinely perched on top of a large, muddy hill. The building was backdropped by cherry and wild crabapple trees, and again, only the gritty sky spoiled the perfect picture of safety and wilderness. Shrugging at the irony, Mark hadn't been in a church since being robbed of his dreams. He strode that way, searching for anything that might be trouble. Seeming empty didn't make it so. Dog, who came almost to his hip, stayed close, occasionally growling his dislike at the new, softer rumble of the river. Head starting to hurt, Mark foraged in his kit for a pain pill and swept the small town around him. The outskirts of Franklin, identified by the sign at a nearby street corner, looked mostly untainted, surrounded by neat white homes and white picket fences. His gaze flicked from the untouched manger scenes at the Christmas lights that still decorated most of the area. Not much damage. Were the people here? Mark listened intently, but heard only wind. The silence pressed in as if something was wrong, but other than the river trying to kill him, it was the same here as in every small town he had passed through since the war emptied over. He scouted the next intersection, attention, caught by a charred metro bus still full of rotting corpses, and he was thrown back in time to his escape, his first brush with the walking dead, and what he'd encountered when he rolled out from under the bus. Help! Oh my God! Ah! Mark stared in horror at the people stumbling past at the bus as he stood up, soldiers and civilians alike, faces bloody, stumbling blindly, some shooting at random. Help! No! The screams were deafening, and there were other noises too, ones that made him want to stick his guts up, but the gunfire was the clearest to his trained mind. Mark eased away from the walking corpses who were now firing out of reflex, mowing down others like themselves. Eyes wide and feet unsteadily, Mark scanned for even one other survivor, but found only more breathing dead. He turned suddenly, sensing movement. He ripped over a bloody pile and hard on his ass. Please, what happened? The soldier's deadened orbs dripped blood, ran over his lashes and cheeks in small torrents, and Mark hesitated, almost overcome with his first ever case of panic. This wasn't foreign land, it was America. I can hear you breathing, you know, the army man stated almost casually. Mark watched the scarlet drops roll off of his dead sockets, creeping down his cheeks to hit the dirt before disappearing, all of it seemingly to be happening in slow motion. War? Bomb? But where? North or south? Mark considered aware that the muscle in the blind man's jaw had begun to twitch erratically while he waited for the answer. South? I thought so. The soldier's voice was without emotion. Thank you. Calmly, without any indication, he was going to the wounded man, raised the gun to his mouth, and pulled the trigger. Blood sprayed wildly, raining across Mark's face, and he took off running, trying not to scream, and not even if he was succeeding. Crunch! The sound of the water, further destroying the debris that had collected, pulled Mark from the flashback, and he wished the images would go away. He had begun moving carefully on foot after that, trekking determinedly to the family home, only to discover no one there, despite the funeral being set for that very day. The house had no signs of hasty retreat, no letters of explanation, and there were no fresh graves at the family plot. What had happened? Mark swept the city limits of Franklin. Drawn to the hills, he lingered on to the cemetery, its iron gates surrounded by decaying bodies, few of them wrapped. No one had known what to do with their dead. Neither had Mark. He almost hadn't come at all. I'm sorry, Marine. The base commander clapped him on the shoulder sympathetically. Mark stuffed his legal letter into the garbage. They were standing next to the other man moved by. Drill calls and mess bells echoed throughout the bricks of the hall by the base. Thank you, sir. His superior regarded him for a long moment, clearly unsure of the man's mood. I've scheduled your leave for the funeral starts ASAP. Mark wasn't sure if he would go, wasn't sure why he suddenly felt like a kid afraid of the dark. It was just his mother. Thank you, sir, he repeated automatically. She, the visitor, you refunded last month? Yes, sir. Mark didn't offer any details, even though he knew the base commander didn't like a personal interest in just anyone. He had refused Mary's visit every time she came, hadn't spoken to her even by mail in over a decade, and now that she was dead, he still hated her because of what she'd cost him. The last time they'd seen each other was right before his first hitch was up. Thanks to the threat of the charges being filed, he hadn't been allowed to leave the base before then, and that final conversation had been short and cold. So you can come home now, Mary said as she viewed him. Mark was silent as he sat stiffly across from her. The harlot ran to the heathen city right after you. Came here. She won't be temptation, but you'll have to. No. Her age-lined face flew to his and then to the hands on the table and that were clenching in anger. No what? Mark leaned closer, loathing her. She hadn't changed. Her glasses were still crooked, her face just as indifferent. He read no regret or even understanding in her cold blue depths. No caring for the life that she had taken or denied him. I'm not coming home ever. Her expression stunned. Mary's hand fell on the worn Bible in her lap, and Mark stood up. You put me here, took away what I loved, and now that I'm 21, I don't need you or have to listen to you. Forget my name. You're dead to me. All right, guys, I'm going to stop there so I don't get into the story too far and forget about the time because it's getting good. But we'll start next week, and it will be right in the middle of the chapter because it looks like this chapter is quite long here. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 pages more for this chapter, so we'll just leave it there. We'll take up on, page, it just says how many 100% we're through it. I will just mark the page, and then we will be back to it next week. And the first word on that chapter will be crack. All right, you guys. It was a great talking to you this morning and reading the story to you. Let's not forget about the coffee chat in the morning, okay? So, till then, you guys know I can't do any of this without you guys. You guys mean the world to me, no matter what anybody says. It's God bless you, and God bless me, and God bless the US of A. Thanks for watching, you guys.